Well, here it is, folks. The first Super Tournament of the year, 2015, the 77th Tata Steel Chess Tournament. Great action, great tournament, great world-class players. Don't miss any of the action. And here are the participants for the Tata Steel 2015. This is the Masters section. Hell of a lineup here, folks. Magnus Carlsen, current world champion, #1 rated in the world. Fabiano Caruana, Italian-American, playing for Italy, #2 in the world. Levin Arodian, great player, #6 in the world. Anish Giri from the Netherlands. You'll see a lot of Netherlands players in this tournament because they're playing in the Netherlands. Wesley So just switched from the Philippines to USA. I saw Wesley at Millionaire Chess in Las Vegas in October, #10 in the world. Maxime Vacher-Lagraf from France, #13. And I'm sure I'll butcher this name. Jav Tasizik, #50 in the world, from Poland. Timur Rajabov. I like Timur a lot. He's had a hard time the last year and a half, but he's still #20 in the world. Lorraine Ding from China. Jobava from Georgia. Exciting player. Look for crazy games with Jobava. And one of my personal favorites of all time, Vasily Ivanchuk from Ukraine. I'll tell you the truth, I like Vasily a lot. He's a really interesting guy. Hao Yifan from China, current women's world champion. Luke Van Wheelie from the Netherlands. I met Luke once and got his autograph in 2010 in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania at the World Open. He's a pretty cool guy. And Ivan Saric from Croatia to round out the field. Average rating 2746, category 20. This is a hell of a tournament, folks. I'll tell you, someday I'm going to put this on my bucket list. I live in the eastern United States in upstate New York, and I would love to go just once before I leave this world to go see that tournament. It's a really cool city. It's a really cool place. I'll just have to see someday I'll be able to make it. Anyway, stay tuned for all the action and all the great games. Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. Another game from round 2 of the 77th edition of Tata Steel Chess. This is from the Masters section between #2 rated player in the world, Fabiano Caruana, Italian-American, representing Italy, as white, and Ivan Saric as black from Croatia. Let's get to it. It's going to be a closed Ruy Lopez. Interesting opening. You don't see it a lot, as much as you should. Everybody plays Sicilians, which I can't stand. Rook, pawn, bishop comes back, d6. Boom, the c3 pawn, of course, to give a out for the bishop, plus helps control the d4 square. Castles, h3. That's a really annoying pin from that bishop there, so rook e8, d4, to b7, knight comes up, temporarily blocking off the dark-squared bishop on c1. Bishop f8 is getting out of the way to get the rook on the e-file. And d5. I mean, where's that knight going to go? You probably could go here, then maybe come up here. But it looks tough. I mean, where's he going to go, really? So he has to go back to b8. Knight f1, bring the knight around. Knight comes up to d7. That's a good spot for that knight. Well, I really don't like knights guarding each other, as the owner of the Chess Club and Scholastic Center, Ring Sigfeld, said they're codependent. But I think more importantly, I think he likes that square too. Knight goes to h2. Interesting though. Knight to g3 is the computer selection. Maybe a third of a pawn down. a4, bishop g5. Knight to h2 isn't even on the list. That must be something that Fabiano must be working on in his preparation. And I'm sure they're in preparation still. Whoops, a5. a4 to block that off, stop that nonsense. Black doesn't want to take here. This bishop takes bearing down on here. That's a disaster for him. This pawn can't move. This knight is pinned. Of course, he doesn't take it. He goes b4, c takes, a takes, bishop g5. Good pin there. What to do, as I always say. I don't think that passed a pawn for white's that big of a deal. The only thing I don't like about white's position is how this bishop is kind of hemmed in here. We'll have to see how that works out. Bishop b7. If he had gone h6 instead of chase off the bishop, bishop takes, queen takes, bishop c4. What about an even game? After bishop d7, bishop to c4, knight c5. That's a good spot for that knight now. And if you notice, this white pawn is never going to get to here to chase it off, and there's no white pawn here to chase it off. So that's a good spot for that knight. I think I chase it away is another knight of the dark squared bishop. Bishop takes, bishop takes. If g had taken, of course, knight to g4, king h8, knight g3, and black's doomed. After bishop takes, bishop b5. Finally, that light squared bishop's got something to do. Rook f8, knight to d2, bishop a6. Interesting dilemma. What would you do? Would you take the bishop? Fabiano decided to go knight to b3 instead. Interesting. Bishop takes, knight takes, bishop e8, just takes that bishop right away. And then it goes back to d3. So, it's a bishop pair against two knights. We'll see how this works out for Fabiano. Queen goes to b8 to guard the pawn. You can't. This pawn here is so backwards. You come up, it'll take it in passant. Oh, wrong way. Take it in passant. b3. King wants to move that rook instead of babysitting that pawn at a4. Bishop g5, just to cover some spots. Now this rook can't come over to here because of the bishop. Really can't push pawn and chase it off either. That bishop's in a good spot. Knight to f1. c6. He finally goes after white's pawn center. After c6, going after white's pawn center. Knight to b2. Interesting. Let's go back here. See what the computer likes. I've got a Fritz 13 computer running off screen. Queen to g4 was the choice of the computer. And d takes c6. And then bishop takes. But Fabiano decides to go knight to b2. If he went queen to g4, bishop, pawn takes, bishop takes, with a small advantage for white, maybe a point, 3/4 of a point. Eventually that pawn's going to go to f3 to guard the e4 pawn. After knight to b2, f5. That's a really ambitious move. Really ambitious. I think they were on move 27. I'm not sure what the time were for the players, but I think he's really going after that center. He wants the center pawns to dominate. We'll see how that works out. After f5, d takes, bishop takes, e takes, and then d5. Now those pawns look very menacing, but I don't think they're nearly as dangerous as they look. Knight to e3. Kind of edging black on to move his pawns. The farther they get down the board, the harder they are going to be to protect. But here's where I think Saric messes up. Now bishop takes e3 to get rid of that knight is the computer's choice, and I agree. He's got h6. I don't know why he would do that, but he went queen to b7. And the points jump up for white to over 1.5 points. Now it's a 1.75 advantage. If bishop had taken, after pawn takes, rook takes, it's basically even, minute advantage for white. But I think with those two center pawns, he thought his position was better than it actually was. That's just my opinion. Knight, rook a to e8. Got to protect those two passers. Queen to g4. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Interesting though. This is a weird position. I mean, Knights are good blockaders, so pass pawns, but I'm not sure what he would do on this one. Bishop takes, pawn, bishop d7, queen takes. He wants to trade queens. Now Fabiano's up 2 pawns, those of you that are keeping track, and they're both connected passers. Of course he wants to trade queens, make his life a lot easier. Of course there's no way that black can do that. And then g4, that's a pretty gutsy move there. It's the obvious move, with queens on the board to expose your king like that, but I think that's exactly the right move to make. Queen a6, hitting the knight. Knight goes to c5, queen to d6. Now, I'm sure all of us would just try to guard that knight and eventually take the bishop, but Fabiano's a little smarter than us. He goes knight to e4, or excuse me, pawn to e4, rook to c8, hitting the knight. He guards the knight, rook comes over, e takes. I mean, this is a weird position. What are you going to do here? Rook to, he goes e4, rook to e3, beautiful. Does a lot of things. Guards this pawn, stops this pawn from moving, and guards the square for the queen to infiltrate. What a multi-purpose move that is. Queen h6. Queen takes doesn't really change much. a5, and that pawn's going to run. But after queen to h6, queen e1, queen takes, fails, because of rook to e8, knight, rook takes check, king to g2, rook here, and white loses. But after queen e1, bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes, it's bad. Knight takes. And there's really no compensation at all. No compensation at all. So, Ivan Saric from Croatia resigns. That's 2 games in a row for Caruana. Here we go again. He pulled this, I believe it was 6 or 7 games in a row against the top players in the world at the Singfield Cup in St. Louis last year. And here he is with 2 wins in a row. Now, granted, it wasn't the top of the field, but 2 wins is 2 wins. And his biggest rival here, Magnus Carlsen, has 2 draws. So he's 1 full point up on Magnus after 2 rounds. That's quite an accomplishment. Anyway, folks, that's the game, or one of the games from round 2 of the 77th edition of Tata Steel Chess. I hope you enjoyed it. Look for other videos coming up from this tournament. My favorite tournament, by the way, of the year. And as always, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Look at that. That's beautiful. It's got to be one of the most proud moments of my life, I guarantee you.